Hello, you're watching the Movie Night Review. It's Albert here, and today we're going to be talking about Ted. Now, before I go on to talk about the film, I just want to say, once again, please make sure you check out the Movie Night blog. Links in the description. I've got quite a lot of film reviews on there, and some non-film related stuff, but my latest review there for Deadpool 2 is up there. Please make sure you check that out, links in the description. Now, to start off this review, I've got a slightly strange way of starting off, because I'm actually going to praise the sequel to this film. I actually think that Ted 2 is a funnier film than Ted 1. I think Ted 2 has more memorable scenes and some funnier jokes, and I actually prefer Amanda Seyfried's character as a sort of female kind of love interest instead of Mila Kunis's character from the first film. So if you're interested in checking out a Ted film, I would recommend Ted 2 instead of Ted 1. But to go on to talk about Ted 2, so Ted's the story of John Bennett, who's a child from Boston who wishes his teddy bear could come alive and be his best friend. So we see that 20 odd years later, and John, who's played by Mark Wahlberg, is grown up, and he's trying to balance his friendship with Ted. His friendship with Ted largely involves getting drunk, taking drugs, not really doing much, and also his relationship with his girlfriend Laurie, who's played by Mila Kunis. So it's the brainchild of Seth Macfarlane, and he wrote it, he directed it, he voices Ted. And I should first say that I think that Seth MacFarlane is a talented guy. His voices are very funny, and he's a decent singer as well. Family Guy is not my favourite show ever. I think it has some funny moments. It's not a great show ever, but I quite enjoy it occasionally. For me, Ted is a bit the same. It has a couple of funny gags. Some of the kind of over the top kind of humour works. It's amusing in a couple of parts. It does have some memorable jokes. Also, some bits that work less well for me. I think the interactions between Ted himself and John are the funniest. With Mark Wahlberg does that kind of lovable idiot kind of thing well. I found his girlfriend character Laurie a bit irritating at times, and her boss, who's played by Joel McHale, it's a bit unconvincing really. As a villain, I actually prefer Giovanni Ribisi, who attempts to try and steal Ted. Who returns in the sequel. Actually, he's a funnier villain than Joel McHale. So thankfully, they ditch him for the second film. So it's not groundbreaking, but it does have some funny moments in it. There are just two things I wanted to highlight about the film. There's one scene in particular I have an annoying problem with, and it's this scene which sort of attempts to parody Airplane. If you don't know the film, Airplane's a comedy film from 70s, I think, or possibly the 80s. If you haven't seen the film, it's really, really funny. But in Ted, the scene that it's parodying is a bit where John and Laurie are talking about how they met. And he says he remembers how they met as being exactly like the sort of Staying Alive dance scene from the film. If you've seen Ted, you'll know what I mean. They're sort of dressed up in his clothes, and if you've seen Airplane, you'd know the scene I mean. But for me, it's not parodying a scene. If you just copy the exact, it's exactly the same as the scene in Airplane, and so you're not attempting to parody this at all. If you just copy a funnier joke from a funnier film, that's not really parody. That's just copying a funny joke. And it's a bit the same when Ted says, "Oh, I don't sound like that much like Peter Griffin" at one point, and it's just like, oh, okay, so Seth MacFarlane also voices Peter Griffin. It's not really a joke. It's just acknowledging Seth MacFarlane as a comedian, really. And that kind of references like that always irritate me a bit in comedy films, in particular. It's just like, okay, you're referencing something else that exists. If you're going to reference other things, I have no problem with that, but you've got to do something clever with it, do something different. But this doesn't really do that. It just copies something else. And lastly, I guess I should address that there's a slight racial element to some of MacFarlane's comedies, and a few jokes in both the first and admittedly the second film revolve around these kind of like racial stereotypes. Now, I'm not here to say that jokes about race should be completely off the table, and I don't think that the kind of racial related jokes are always bad and are always terrible. You should definitely never do them. I just think that, for me in comedy, everything's fair game. But these kind of jokes, they have to be really extremely well crafted and well written, and they have to really work. But in Ted, I don't feel this is the case. I think some of them just seem a bit lazy, perhaps, and not altogether funny, and they just sort of like go at the expense of these kind of sort of non-white characters. So I think it's worth bearing that in mind. But it's not terrible. But so overall, I'd probably give it 3 stars out of 5. As it does make me laugh a couple of times. And I've criticised it in here, but he's got a couple of funny moments. Stupid but fun, reasonably funny. If you're a fan of Seth MacFarlane's humour, I think you'll really like it in that respect. I say I'm not the world's biggest fan, but I think it is decent. I say if I was to recommend a Ted film, I actually think the sequel, Ted 2, has got more sort of funny moments, jokes that I could recall. If you said, tell me a funny joke from the film, I would say that. So thanks for watching. Don't please to make sure you check out the blog as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.